Hello and welcome back to Perpetual News. I'm your host, Stephen Beck, and today I'm going to be talking about a few of the things that have come up over the past couple of weeks, including Donald Trump being shot in the ear by Thomas Matthew Crooks, um, Joe Biden stepping down after a rambunctious RNC convention. Well, I suppose I just said convention twice, the Republican National Convention. They spent all of their time and advertising and their money on arguments against Joe Biden. And in fact, the day after Kamala Harris became the presumptive nominee. Well, I'd also like to talk about a few of these spendings and financings of the campaigns that are going to really affect how the outcome of this election comes down to it. The biggest thing that we have coming up right now is the selection of Kamala Harris's VP choice. There seemingly is about 4 or 5 candidates that are in that mix right now, but it's going to get closer and closer to just one eventual candidate at the end of this. So I'm going to do a rundown of all of the candidates for VP, as well as talk about other things that are going to affect this election and see where I think the polls might head. I'd also like to incorporate some polling data, although, as we all know, polling data is sometimes unreliable and sometimes a little bit out there. So we're going to see how all that goes in this episode today. So thank you for joining me. First of all, you obviously have your safe blue states, right? These are pretty reliably not going to flip over. And if they do, it's going to be, something that's going to be a little out there, like I said. And I'm going to classify Virginia as safe today, but it is really, a lean state now. It's coming narrow. New Hampshire, I'm going to leave as a lean state. I do think it is going to remain blue this election. I don't think the people that are saying it's going to go red are in a right set of mind. Of course, Nebraska's second district is, a very close to, 50% there, but it is still, I think, going to go blue in this election. So that leaves the Democrats with 226 versus the safe states for the Republicans, which, as you will see, comes out. And it is, it's pretty good margins for the Republicans, I think, in this election. They have definitely got a upper advantage here. Now, Maine, I'm going to put in the likely Democratic column, especially on their second district as well. If we're talking about these states, right, and Kamala Harris specifically, we got to look at who her VP choices might be. Now, I think that she is going to select someone wise for the campaign. And by wise, I mean something that's not going to piss off anyone, right? She wants to go for the most blandest choice, someone that's not an uproar, because within her, unfortunately, with elections, you already have the case that she is, in fact, a black woman, which is fine. But it's actually good, in my opinion, that we would have some representation in the White House of those two characteristics of a person. But the reality is, it's going to be a hard sell for Americans. So she's going to choose, and I assume this, but I don't know. I assume she's going to choose, a straight white male to balance out the ticket, at least for her more independent, more center-focused supporters. Now, is that to say that it's impossible that she would choose a woman or a person that's not white or not straight? It's not impossible. She could choose Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation. That could be a possibility. She could choose the current governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. That could be a possibility. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it's quite unlikely. So let's go over the swing states this year. Now, if I'm being for real, Texas is not in play, in my opinion. A lot of people think, oh, Kamala Harris is going to do quite well in Texas and places like Florida. As we've seen, there's been a general red trend in those states over the last couple of elections. Now, Florida went for Obama, didn't go for Clinton, went for Trump. You know, and then of course with 2020, Biden didn't carry either of the states as well. Now, let's talk about Kamala Harris's first possible choice here. That would be Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. He's a well-liked governor. He's white. He's straight. The only problems he's got is, right now, they're dealing with a situation with a cover-up of a story of someone that something he has to do with, like some sort of sexual assault thing, or I don't even know. I'd have to look it up. I can't remember, but it's a scandal in the waiting is all I'm saying. And if that is who they choose, that might not be a good idea, specifically for those two reasons. You don't want to choose someone to the right of Kamala Harris on Israel, because a lot of left-leaning supporters are going to view that as a bad thing. Now, places like Dearborn and Michigan, you want to have someone on the ticket that's to the left of Kamala Harris on things like the Israel-Palestine war. So that's why I don't think it will be Josh Shapiro. But if it were, I think you definitely secure Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania is secure. Now, as far as the Sun Belt states, I think she really loses some support with Josh Shapiro in the Sun Belt. But places like Wisconsin, white guy, quite well liked in the Midwest, could go to her, you know? And they would, of course, go to her by pretty low margins, but that still puts her over the 270 delegates needed to win. Now, like I said, I don't think it'll be Josh Shapiro. The other people that you could possibly select are Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky. He adds a little bit of that southern drawl. He has a stark differences with J.D. Vance, who claims he's from the Appalachian Mountains, and then he got caught in a lie about that. Even now, I think Andy Beshear is actually being kind of vetted right now to be the VP, because he drew a stark difference between him and J.D. Vance by saying, "You're not from here," being the governor of Kentucky. So perhaps that could be a good choice. It would definitely lead to a lot of support, I think, in some more of these rural southern states. Like, I definitely think Georgia, in that case, if we got Andy Beshear on the ticket, would definitely be a more likely case. In fact, I've seen some recent polling data that says Kamala Harris is doing quite better than Biden in that regard, so that could be good. Places like North Carolina, I think North Carolina is a bit of a stretch from what I've seen so far, but it could be. I'm not saying it can't be. I definitely think Andy Beshear would help in Arizona as well. That could be good. It would be definitely, a very tilt state. It's definitely going to be a tilt area for sure. But I also think that Andy Beshear has a little bit of that charm that he brings to the table still in Wisconsin. Because, like I said, he's a straight, white, well-beloved governor. I believe he's the second most liked governor in the entire United States, despite being in a red state and the Democratic governor. It doesn't quite make sense, but somehow he's drawn stark contrast with his opponents. And for things like trans rights and labor, he would also be good for a place like Michigan, which has a lot of pro-labor movements and unions, and they miss their, their automotive industry. So that could be quite good. And of course, as you've seen, just from putting these 4 states on the map, even if they didn't carry Pennsylvania, Nevada, or North Carolina, they would still win the election. Now, do I think that it's possible that Kamala Harris and Andy Beshear lose the election still? Absolutely. This is not to say that they couldn't. This is just to say that I think they would win. The other things I've seen have been Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. I think if you select him, you definitely secure Arizona. However, a weak Democrat would probably be put in his place, and you might lose the Senate. So that's the only problem with him. There is also Tim Walz. I believe he is the governor of is it Minnesota? Minnesota. I've seen him being suggested. I've also seen Roy Cooper, I believe he's the governor of North Carolina, suggested. I don't think it'll be either of those candidates, although I don't mind either of them. And I like them for the election. They could definitely bring something to the table. I, being a resident of Illinois, would love if J.B. Pritzker could be put in that position. I think he would do quite well. He could add a lot of funding. He's a billionaire. But he's also to the left of Kamala Harris on a lot of issues, such as freeing nonviolent drug offenders, as well as legalizing marijuana. And I actually don't know Kamala Harris's stance on legalizing marijuana, but I'm going to assume she's either for decriminalization or maybe she's for legalization but hasn't come out and said it. But J.B. Pritzker could definitely add that to the how we view this election. So I would suggest him. But for a general analysis of how this might go, I think that you're going to have something like this map. We'll have a likely maybe a tilt Pennsylvania. I think Michigan will definitely, as it trends, it'll be bluer than the rest of the Rust Belt here. And I think Wisconsin is also going to be in the tilt category, which does put the Democrats over 270. I do think that Trump is quite a weak candidate this election, especially with the choosing of J.D. Vance. That does seem weak. I also want to mention that if Trump does not go to debate Kamala Harris, that would look very bad for him. And even if he does go to the debate, I believe he would lose because she is a prosecutor. She knows how to argue. And I know it's been said in the past, oh, Trump's easy to debate. No, he's not. But I do believe Kamala Harris would come out on top, at least with the independent category. Now, you're not going to win over Republican electors in this vote. Okay, that's not a category you can win in this election. They are vastly with Trump still, even in this intense area of politics we've gotten to. Now, I do think North Carolina is pretty much lost, unless they choose Roy Cooper, and even then it is a little bit scarce that they would win that. Arizona is definitely a maybe state, and so is Nevada, and so is Georgia. Recent polls have Kamala Harris behind by 2 points in Georgia, at least one that I have seen. So we put that in the tilt category, and that's about 1 to 2 percentage range. And of course, Kamala Harris being a black woman, that might organize the Atlanta suburbs behind her, which could swing Georgia her way. I'm not quite sure how they perceive her yet. We've only had a few days of polling data to really gather that information, but overall, it's definitely going to be a good thing, her at the top of the ticket for Georgia. As far as Nevada goes, it's an odd state. And I'll tell you why it's an odd state. It's not focused on, right? The bigger states, the ones with the more delegates, are going to be focused on. Nevada is a true swing state. I'm sure there will be visits there, but they're going to be infrequent, and the candidates are definitely going to focus on places like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin more. Now, as far as if Mark Kelly were chosen, he's well liked in Arizona. I think that it secures Arizona for you, but I think that also might translate into a victory in Nevada, but I'm not quite sure. So as far as elections goes right now, with just Kamala Harris on the ticket, I think your map ends up like something a little bit possibly like this. This is kind of what I imagine, with the Democrats having 288 to the Republicans 250. Now, this could change. I think Georgia is definitely something that could change. I definitely think all of these could change. I do think Michigan will go blue this election. I don't see it going red unless something massively terrible happens on the Democratic side. But right now, numbers are up. People are starting to realize that Kamala is massively backed. I heard reports that Obama was going to endorse her soon, but I think it's all of the governors, nearly all of the senators, and most of the representatives have endorsed her. So I believe you'll have Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. And as for who I think is going to be her VP pick, I believe right now that it's going to be Andy Beshear, governor of Kentucky. But I'd be much more happier if it was J.B. Pritzker. And that is where I will leave you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And welcome back to myself. I haven't uploaded in a long time. Perpetual News is back. Thank you, everybody. Go ahead and subscribe, comment what you think, and let me know how I did on this video, and if you like the format of what I've got going on here in the background. If not, sorry, I guess. Goodbye, everybody.